What's up, Tull fans? Shrouded Day here with another flute video for you. Instructions on how to play like Jethro Tull. And this lesson is going to focus on flutter tonguing. Flutter tonguing is one of the techniques that I get asked about the most. How do you do that? How do you make that sound? By the time you're done with this video, you may ask yourself why I needed the video. It's that easy. Now, we're going to focus on what is called alveolar flutter tonguing, which is the technique that Ian uses and most blues flutists, at least as far as I know, use. And it's the technique that I use. And that involves placing the tongue on the alveolar ridge, which is this little cliff right here, right behind your top teeth. Right here, that's right. It's hard to talk like this. No, I hope you understand me anyway. That little cliff right there, you put your tongue right on the edge of that cliff, and you push air through. That's all there is to it. You can practice in the car, you can practice in an office meeting as long as you don't care about looking silly. And when you're practicing this technique, make sure to have your embouchure basically where you would have it with the flute anyway, so that you can practice having your lips in that position while you're doing that with your tongue. So it's kind of like this. Now, too much air, obviously it's going to be a little too harsh. You're not going to get the sound that you want. That's not going to do you any good. Not enough air, and you're not going to get that tongue to rattle at all. That's not good either. It's going to sound like this. All right, so we don't want that. That sounds terrible. But if you get just the right amount of air going through there and get that tongue bouncing on that alveolar ridge, that's exactly what you're looking for. Silly, isn't it? But it works. And that's how we get this tone. Now, when you're doing this, you want to keep that tongue a little bit relaxed. Don't stiffen the tongue. Hold it against the ridge so it's a little bit firm. You want it to bounce, obviously. So you have to have it a little bit firm against that ridge. But don't make it too stiff in there. Keep it loose. Keep it flapping. I know how that sounds. It's weird. Keep it loose. Keep it flapping. That's the key to flutter tonguing. But also, you have to have command of your tone, of your breath, as well as that tongue. And it just goes a little bit like this. Now you notice that little pushing that I do, that's just you're pushing the breath out. And instead of pushing the breath with the diaphragm, which you can do, you can also push it with the air that you have in your throat or in the back of your mouth. So it's like that. You do that, and you can experiment with this and get some nice tones, some nice, what they call them, glottal stops in your flute playing, if you will. Disclaimer, by the way, I am not classically trained. Some of my terms may not be quite correct. This is stuff that I've learned over the years, watching Ian, playing myself, playing along to Ian's music. So just a standard disclaimer there. If you're like, hey, that's not the right term. Yeah, I know. So anyway, that is how that is done. Now, what you can also do, and what Ian used to do way back in the day, and it became kind of a technique of his, but at first was more of a way for him to bolster his tone, is to do the voiceover while you're doing the flutter tonguing. And it turned into something that we all kind of enjoy, and so he kept that. You don't have to do that, but if you did, it would sound like this. Now, you may notice that when you're doing the flutter tonguing, the voice may creep in there naturally anyway. Let it happen. It sounds good, or if you want it to sound that way, then just let it happen. And it also involves a little bit of practice with your singing, so if you're not practiced with that, it's a good time to try it. You'll also notice that if you're singing and playing the flute as well, like if you're in a cover band, whatever, and you're doing both at the same time, these techniques help each other. So you will notice an improvement in your singing, you will notice an improvement in your flutter tonguing and your playing in general if you're also a singer. Just a little helpful tip there. So anyway, That is how it's done with Jethro Tull flute style flutter tonguing. There's another style called alveolar. No, I'm sorry, this is alveolar. There's another style called uvular, and that is the style that I think most classical flutists tend to use, and it uses the uvula in the back of the throat. Now, I find that extremely difficult. For those who have a native language that uses the back of the throat to make sounds, to roll the R's like it's probably going to be a lot easier to do that. If that is your case, if that is your situation, by all means try that. That might actually work better for you if you're already used to making those sounds with your uvula. But if you're of an English speaking like myself, then probably the alveolar flute flutter tonguing is going to be a little more easy for you to do. And again, it's so easy. You can practice stopping and starting in the middle of a phrase. You get some nice stutter effects there, some nice, what do you call it, a staccato effect there with your flute playing. And it comes in really handy, obviously, with a lot of Ian solos, such as, let's see, what do we got here? Let's try Cross-Eyed Mary. Now that little flutter tongue is not in the original, but you can just throw that in just for flavor. So that is all there is to it with flutter tonguing. Super easy. If you have any other questions, let me know in the comments. Also, if you like what you see here and you want to support me on Patreon, you can go to patreon.com/shroudedday. And I look forward to the next video. Stay tuned.